how Bitcoin made end SARS protests censorship-resistant. Hong Kong has been experiencing anti-government protests that have changed the region, possibly forever. Since June 2019, protesters have been active in one way or another, leading many to describe the situation as a political crisis with no obvious end. Back in December 2019, when the authorities in Hong Kong started shutting down bank accounts that were linked to the protesters, they must have thought it would cut off their oxygen supply. What ended up happening instead was one of the world's biggest test cases for censorship-resistant money. And what went on in Nigeria in October 2020 with the hashtag EndSARS protests was yet another test case. Hashtag EndSARS is a social campaign that's opposed to Nigeria's Special Anti-Robbery Squad, or SARS, arguably the most oppressive and brutal unit of an already oppressive and brutal police force. In the past, there have been calls to do everything to the unit from disbandments to reforms, but successive governments paid lip service to all the agitations. However, the 3rd of October 2020 was a tipping point, when a video of SARS officials allegedly killing a young Nigerian man went viral. It prompted a level of protests that were previously unseen. Hundreds, and in some cases thousands of people took to the streets in major cities across Nigeria and around the world. The protests in Hong Kong and Nigeria were similar in many ways. First, they were both leaderless and decentralized, meaning that power wasn't concentrated with any one organization, political party, or labor union. This made it harder, although not impossible, for the authorities to find turncoats or scapegoats. Secondly, they both utilized avenues for crowdfunding that were out of the reach of the authorities. The money that was raised through these avenues was needed to take care of protest-related expenses such as protesters' medical bills and legal fees. This, in turn, kept the protests going. Shortly after the protests began, a group of Nigerian women came together to form the most visible EndSARS support group. They named themselves the Feminist Coalition. Initially, the Nigerian government seemed accommodating of the protesters and the support groups, even agreeing to some of their demands. However, when a web page for EndSARS hosted on Flutterwave, a local payment infrastructure company, and set up on behalf of the Feminist Coalition, suddenly became unavailable, alarm bells started to go off. Flutterwave chairman Tunde Lemo reportedly granted an interview explaining that he'd asked for the page to be suspended. Less than 24 hours later, however, the company made a spectacular U-turn and denied that the interview ever happened. Whatever was the case, the page remained inaccessible. There were also reports of bank accounts linked to the protesters getting blocked. In response, the Feminist Coalition stepped up its Bitcoin crowdfunding efforts. A co-sign and a retweet from Jack Dorsey, CEO of Twitter and Square, also helped their cause. As at 19 October, the coalition had raised 7.211699909 Bitcoin, the equivalent of $82,476.60 at the time, which was its largest donation in any single currency other than the Naira. And as the Nigerian government's financial intimidation tactics went from covert to overt, that Bitcoin balance grew even more. To circumvent government censorship, the Feminist Coalition decided to fully decentralize its Bitcoin payment system. They'd learned from the Flutterwave incidents that the authorities had no problem censoring local infrastructure providers. Even local Bitcoin exchanges like Bitcoins and Quidax could easily be blocked off. So the coalition switched to a self-hosted payment processor called BTC Pay Server. This enabled them to host their webpage in any country of their choice and move their payment infrastructure away from any single local processor. As for the coalition's donors, they now had the option of making non-custodial transfers, which is a type of crypto transfer that goes directly to a recipient's wallets, thus bypassing central exchanges. Unfortunately, this decentralized setup didn't last very long. The authorities upped the ante and started resorting to more physical forms of intimidation, including allegedly killing protesters at the Lekki Toll Plaza in Lagos on 20th October 2020. This led to the Feminist Coalition officially suspending its operations on October the 22nd. Donations to its accounts and wallets were also stopped. Unlike in Hong Kong, the authorities in Nigeria were able to end what was a peaceful movement using strong-arm tactics after financial intimidation tactics failed to work. But if there was one victory, It was that SARS continued to show the world how peaceful protests can be leaderless, decentralized, and censorship resistant.